Okay. Yeah, good to go? Roll.
Hello everybody and welcome to the War Room. Please bear with me this week. I'm playing with a new piece of equipment and we're just kind of, we're figuring things out as we go. This is a very exciting one. This is a trilogy rematch. DC against Miocic for the heavyweight belt. Obviously DC coming off that first round knockout in the first fight, then Stipe coming through some tough rounds in the second fight, and then finally getting the finish after adapting and throwing some body shots. Both beautiful fights. I'm very much excited about this one because I think there were underestimations on one part over the other. You know, I think DC was underestimated in the first fight by Miocic and the power that he's able to pack in his punches. I think in the second fight, I think DC questioned how much Miocic would take to break. I think Miocic showed a lot of toughness and a lot of resilience in that fight. And anyway, what I'm going to do is, so I have the first two fights pulled up on this screen, and I have my new toy here that allows me to control speed. So please just, you got the controller. So Miocic, longest reigning heavyweight champ going into this. DC stepping up a weight class as the light heavyweight champion to take on Stipe. Obviously, DC's credentials as a heavyweight champion, as a heavyweight fighter going into this were outstanding. Unbeaten as a heavyweight. I don't think he'd been taken down as a heavyweight. I felt like when Miocic came into this one, I feel like he thought he was going to be able to hurt DC pretty good and put him away in 2 rounds. And the way he started this fight very much seemed like that. It seemed like he started too quickly. It seemed like he was trying to catch DC with something clean too early. He always starts off, and he did this in the second fight as well. He starts off very well with his footwork, with his movement. All the things he does in the first sort of 30 seconds of the round are correct, but then he starts to get stationary, and you'll see what I mean. So as the round starts, right, touch gloves. Miocic picks a long stance immediately, which is good for movement, but bad for low kick defense, which is something that he learned. Now, when he's moving like this, and he's managing the space between them. Like imagine this is sometimes what I do. Imagine there's a bar between the two of them. Like this was a game that my old Thai boxing coach Owen used to play. Like he'd get a piece of rope, and the idea was that you couldn't keep pulling on the rope. You had to manage that distance between the two of you. Like you can also do this with a rigid bar, so you can't get very close. So you get used to managing space. You know, as Bruce Lee said in Enter the Dragon, when my opponent expands, I contract, and when I expand, he contracts. You know what I mean? It's the give and take of a fight. Stipe manages this really well until he gets impatient. And when he gets impatient, he starts standing still, and that's when he starts taking low kicks. See now, look, he's already on DC's case. DC's already backed up against the fence. Not exactly sure what to expect from Miocic, I think. I think he was expecting to be able to duck his way into the clinch like he's trying to do now. DC always wants that single necktie. It's the most valuable position for him in the striking range because he knows that he can control his opponent's head to start landing shots. When he's at range, he's got low kicks, and we saw him use the low kicks fairly well in this fight. It was a bit jumpy. Now, this was an underutilized range for Miocic, I think, in the first fight and the second fight. DC's quite happy to give underhooks because he wants you to engage in a wrestling exchange with him. But Miocic does well here, like to take his back, to land these uppercuts in the dirty boxing range, to keep this pressure on him up against the fence, like something he's not utilizing here, which I think he'll learn from the most recent fight, is that he can work the body. Like these knees to the body, these punches to the body. Like this control, this wrist control, he looks like the bigger man here. Like DC looks like he's working. And I know he cruises at this position. I know he's quite comfortable here. But eventually it gets to the stage where it starts to wear on you. Like those knees and those elbows and those, short range punches, they do start to weigh you down a little bit. And I think that this was a range that Miocic always seemed to step out of. Like, let's just move past this a little bit. Like, Miocic was almost always the one to disengage. He's resting here. This is a rest position, and I think it could quite easily be a work position. There we go. So Miocic is now broken the clinch, but he's still right in front of DC, still pressuring him, still trying to land something clean, while DC's the one that's backing up and moving away. And it forced Miocic to move forward, to put himself into DC's range. Lovely work there from DC to reverse. Nice knee to the body there. Okay, that was what I wanted to get to. Slightly underutilized again. Come on. There we go. Okay. So here, again, Miocic showing his strength, but DC showing his slick wrestling ability to be able to turn. Right there on the clinch break, there's a knee there that I think does a bit of damage to DC. Not a nice knee to receive, and beautiful footwork off the fence. Beautiful low kick. You see, this DC at range needs to be working those legs of Miocic. He needs to take that footwork away from him. He needs to stop him being able to dictate the range, because DC needs to get his hands on him. He's got an 8-inch reach disadvantage. And you can constantly see DC kind of reaching and moving. He actually gets a warning for fingers in a minute. See, that's one of the unfortunate side effects of this style that DC's got, where he is reaching out and he's trying to grab wrists. His fingers are extended, but it allows him to force his opponent to engage in the reach-in and then come around the sides and over the top and catch him with 50% power punches. They're not massively impactful, but they're wearing on you. Like look at Stipe's like cheekbone and nose in comparison to where DC is at. There we go. There's an eye poke. It's going to be a conversation, I'm sure, with Stipe and the referee going into this one, because it's part of DC's style. I don't know whether that part of his style is going to change. That's a good little flick just there. I think in Wing Chun that's called Bill G. Anyway, what effect that had on the fight, who knows? I would imagine if you got poked in the eye, if you're trying to land a knockout punch in the first round and you're getting peppered with shots, you're getting frustrated, you've not landed anything clean, you're going to start getting frustrated and start pushing forward and being a bit more reckless. And we're right before the end of the fight here. So think where Stipe's mind is. He's trying to do something significant to put DC in his place as the light heavyweight champion coming up into his division. What's so good about DC's style? The way that he moves. Like he walks himself into range. As people are throwing punches, he's moving away. So the most likely thing he's going to get stung with the jab, which he does. He gets stung with the jab a fair few times. But as the next punch comes over, he's already out the way. That shifting of body weight that he's got, that really flexible midsection allows him to lean out of the way and catch with the backhand and then pull himself back into the clinch where he can start to land. And I mean, I would say a part of the reason why Stipe ended up in that clinch in this fight was A, because of his impatience to kind of get the fight going, and B, because I just think he underestimated DC's punching power. I mean, he wasn't known necessarily for his punching ability. But like as DC's moving in here, beautiful body kick there from DC. Like good low kick from Miocic. I don't think he can neglect kicks here. I just think there's a risk in obviously him getting taken down. But DC's only shown in the last fight that he really wanted to get the takedown in the first round. It was very surprising, to be honest. I'll cover that one in a second. All right, okay. So this happens. DC stings him a couple of times, and look how Miocic jogs himself back into range. This is why I wanted to play with this little thing here. So what we have a brief exchange where DC comes off better. So that's nice timing because we've also got the significant strikes. Okay. Stipe's landed one more punch, but what's probably more prevalent to him in that moment, what's probably more obvious, is that he's missed 20 shots. Like DC's missed a bunch of punches, but at the same time, a lot of DC's punches are segues into clinching anyway. So he's not necessarily putting the same kind of value on his punches as Miocic is. So his state of mind at this point is Miocic has landed less than half the punches that he's thrown. He's not landed anything that's particularly significant. And DC's now getting the better of him in this exchange. So watch how this exchange plays out. Okay. Nice little slip just there from Miocic. Lovely work, but he gets cuffed across the top of the head. Watch how his legs buckle after that happens. This I think, is one of the reasons why he was more susceptible to the punches that landed that knocked him out. As he steps in here, I'm just getting used to playing with this thing on the screen. It's very strange. As he steps in here, you'll see DC throws a jab and Miocic slips past the jab. Lovely slip. As he then rolls, expecting the right hand, so he's slipped the jab, he's now rolling for this right hand. As he's rolling, DC comes across the top, and as if this is Stipe's head, he just cuffs him with the underside of his elbow. Just there, cuffs him. And you just see Stipe just kind of wobble a little bit. That was probably the more impactful thing out of the whole combination. Throws a right hand and misses and gets tagged with another clean punch. Then he jogs himself into range recklessly. That's footwork for covering distance. That's not footwork for moving yourself into range. Like when you jog forward there, that point there is incredibly vulnerable to a level change. He can't really stop his momentum going forward here. So as he's jogging forward, as soon as he lands, look what reaches him. Bang, a palm straight to the face. Like he's already right in DC's range, and DC's ready to throw that hand over the top and clinch him. But Miocic is going to feel comfortable here because he's in range. He's got an underhook. This is the beauty of this position, and this is something that must be so familiar with DC. Imagine how many times, for you grapplers out there, like how familiar is pummeling to you? Like when you watch people do it in the gym the first time, you're like, how can you not do this? It's very strange because it's so instinctive after one point. You've got to think how many years DC's been doing that in his warm-ups and how many weeks he coaches people through that who can't do it. That is one of the most natural things to DC in the world. And the way he swims this arm in here is just a thing of beauty and shifts his weight, keeping a hold of Stipe as he does it. Watch this. So DC brings him in nice and close. Stipe's engaged fully in this position. Watch how DC just swims this arm underneath. Lovely work. Rocks his feet over at the same time. Bam. There it is. Oh, that's a bit jumpy there. We'll have to have someone do some magic with the video on this. Bang. There it is. It's just, I mean, I said this after the fight. I didn't expect DC to have that kind of power. Beautiful there. Bang, bang, bang. Fight's finished. Good work. Good finish. Beautiful knockout. Really, really impressive. I think there was an underestimation on Stipe's part of the power that DC has. I think, and this might sound very strange as well, but I think when you're fighting someone that you expect to have punching power, you're more expectant to receive power in exchanges, so you're more prepared for it. I think in this fight, the vulnerability partly was down to the fact that he'd been cuffed across the top of the head, and this motion here it seems to daze people in fights. It seems to kind of disorientate people. I'd imagine because it just kind of folds the artery on the side of the neck into itself. It's like a quick choke. It's like a knockout shock. You know, it kind of shakes the head for a second. And I think that Miocic was partly stumbled by that, and partly because he was moving forward to try and clinch, not really thinking that he was going to receive a knockout punch on the end of it. And DC just beautifully swimming that arm underneath, stepping across, utilising the momentum of his body to land the knockout punch was absolutely beautiful. But you can imagine how much that played on Stipe's mind. He was like, I just didn't expect that to happen. Of all the ways that he expected DC to win, it would have been to wear him down, take his back and choke him out. Because that's what we'd seen from DC up to that point. And you don't take a light heavyweight that puts that clinic on people and move them up to heavyweight and expect something different. You expect them to be better at that thing that they normally do. That DC cycle, that grind that he puts people in. Walks into people's guard, beats them up in the clinch, takes them down, wears them down, and then makes them vulnerable to the rear naked choke. I'd imagine that Stipe did a lot of takedown defense up against the fence, did a lot of scrambling back to his feet, probably didn't do a lot of defensive work in the clinch. Okay. Let me have a quick... Where's the replay? Here we go. That's a man that's worked hard for a title. Yeah. Okay, right, let me just skip past this. Let's get to the replays. Okay. So you can see here how he swims that arm underneath, and he still keeps a hold of Miocic here. That's a hook there to hold Miocic into this power that's coming across. Bang. Look at that. I mean, that is a lovely shot. There was just no defense on that side for Miocic. Like, if anything, he was expecting to get caught with a few punches, get peppered. Like, he watched Alexander Gustafsson take a bunch of punches from this position. He was not expecting that full power, but watch how DC moves his whole body into it. Like I said, he's holding him with this left hand, turns his whole body, hips kick over, he's stepping with his left leg as he's punching. His whole body weight shifts into that punch. It was beautifully timed. It was a lovely punch. I think we get the top angle here as well. Watch the move across of his legs and his hips. Bang. Picture perfect. So what's exciting about the second one is that we now go into this next fight knowing full well that DC's got punching power and Miocic doesn't really want to be tangling in that range. Right. I'm going to skip through more of this one because obviously this one's a lot longer. Okay. So again, the first round, first few seconds, interestingly here, DC comes in 10 pounds lighter in this one. I'm interested to see what weight he comes in at the scales because I think it might be significant based on what he's been doing strength and conditioning wise. I think maybe he had more muscle mass going into the first one. He was 146, I think, in the first one. 246 in the first one and 235.5 in the second one. So I think maybe he actually lost a bit of muscle mass. I think he'd been doing less conditioning. Okay, so like Stipe's doing the same thing as he was in the last fight, which I don't necessarily think is a bad thing. He's moving, he's on his toes, he's mobile, he's managing the distance between them, but he does it for about 30 seconds. And then he starts to get stationary again. So he's backing up here. He's keeping this space between the two of them nice. I'd like him to be using his jab a little bit more, but obviously he knows that anything that he throws in DC's direction is going to make him vulnerable. This is where he starts to get stationary. Now look at his posture a bit more. Now he's like, right, okay, all right, now we're in a fight. He just gets too stationary. And he's not throwing anything. He's not giving DC anything to concern himself about. So now DC starts to turn the tide. Now you can see DC starting to take the center. And DC starts to pick up his pace. I mean, that's a very impactful shot. And for Stipe to have not done anything to tweak that between the first and second fight tells me that he's probably not going to tweak it this next time around. So he's going to have to use his footwork if he's not going to use low kick defense. You can just kind of feel, though, there's a point, I mean, it's about now where DC starts to feel really comfortable. And then he's got, here we go, there it is. There we go. Now he's just turned the tide. Now you can start seeing him going, okay, now it's time for me to start making this fight work. Stipe's now just being reactive. He's not doing anything to initiate, and then DC steps immediately in with that single necktie. Great work by Stipe moving off the fence. It's good footwork, and we see that a few times, but he's still moving himself straight into DC's range without throwing anything ahead of it. He needs to be behind his jab. He's got quite a short right hand the way he throws it. Most of his power, you see how it's... Let me just show you that. Most of his power... I know I've mentioned this before, but for whatever reason, he drops off his right hand. Now, watch this. As this right hand comes out here, it starts off... Where are we? It starts off going straight. And as it glances across his chin, watch how quickly it drops off. Even the punch that he landed against Verdum, as he lands it, it was a short right hand. There seems to be a drop-off if he needs to extend that right hand. So he needs to use that jab to set it up. And he didn't seem to be using that a great deal. You've got to imagine there was a bit of animosity coming into this next fight as well. This is a beautiful setup. So watch this. Watch this. So what DC does is he steps into his range. He tries to get the single necktie. Doesn't quite work out, but it's a nice combination anyway. Where are we? Okay, right. So DC's back to against the fence. He's got his back foot on that inside octagon line. Right. So he's going to step in here. He wants the single necktie. That's what he's doing. He steps in. He slips the jab, reaches for the single necktie, lands a right hand and a left hook on the end of it. Doesn't get what he wants though. And then he does a little adjustment of his belt line, which is I just think he's messing with the timing here a little bit. I think he's doing it intentionally. Adjusts his belt line, and then he goes straight into a left hook, bang, and then level change onto a single leg. And this is the best thing about the round for me. This adjustment that DC makes. So he's driving on this single leg. Now watch the way that Miocic cuts himself off to the side. He hooks around the back leg. See this back leg hook he's got here? This is what's keeping Miocic standing at the moment, because DC can't get any leverage on that leg. All he's got is he's got the weight of the leg in his arms, and now he's got the weight of Miocic on his back. But he can't get enough leverage on that single leg to run the pipe and actually put him on his ass, which is where he wants him. So Miocic is doing a great job defending here, but this just shows how high level a wrestler DC is. So what he does is he circles towards the direction that Miocic has the control, and then there's a point where he kicks his leg out. Watch this. Kicks his leg free and then steps across to load him onto his shoulder. I mean, it's a, call me a dork, but it's a work of art. I love these kind of things. I'm learning as I'm watching. So you can see that control there. Like DC's circling in this direction, knowing full well that Miocic is having to chase that circle at the same time. But then he kicks his leg out to release that, so then he can get himself underneath Miocic and cut the corner a bit quicker. Watch. Move. Kicks his leg free there, and then he's underneath him, and then he lifts him. And we've seen him do this to Dan Henderson. We've seen him do it to... Let me play this through because it's funny to watch. We've seen him do this to Gustafsson. We've seen him do it to Dan Henderson. The reason this is beneficial is that these kind of sized individuals aren't used to being slammed to the floor. It takes them a second to kind of orientate. Like if you do that to a flyweight, they practically bounce back to their feet. You do that to a heavyweight, and the gravity's not their friend. Like as they land, there's a disorientation to it, and it gives DC a moment to scramble for a next control position. Now, I thought Stipe did a good job here of scrambling, but he still wasn't able to get off his back. He was still in a position where DC was able to control him, pin him to the floor, and kind of work him over for the rest of the round. I mean, this clearly won DC this round. One thing I will say complimentary of Miocic is he does a good job of kind of stifling everything that DC does. DC doesn't really do anything too significant. Look, the wrist control, he's constantly building frames. This is another benefit of having an 8-inch reach advantage, is that you can post away. I mean, I know it's the stupid thing, you put your hand on a short person's forehead and they're trying to reach you, but like Miocic is able to build these frames here, look. He's able to post and make it difficult for DC to do anything. Like DC's very, very wily in how he shifts that pressure to collapse it, but the work's still good from Miocic to kind of minimize what's happening. The downside is that he's doing that and he's not doing anything to get back to his feet. He's doing nothing offensive right now, and he's doing just enough to allow DC to work to keep this position. I mean, I was expecting a lot more of this from DC. After seeing this in the first round, we'll just skip through this now. After seeing this in the first round, I expected the second round to be much the same. Nice little scramble here. There's no need for Miocic to be in on a takedown here. I think this was a bit of an ego play as well. But this is nice, how DC controls this roll. Good up kicks from Miocic. Good little up kick here. Bounced off DC's forehead. But then watch that control that DC has as he rolls through. Lovely work. I mean, Miocic is scrambling. He's scrambling good. He waited too long. He waited a minute too long. But then he went in on a takedown here, and I don't think this was necessary. This is something else as well. And this is... for young fighters out there, don't do this. It just doesn't look good. It doesn't look good on anybody. Like DC's here right now. He's landing a few hammer fists, and I've seen a couple of people do this. You can leave your memories of this happening in the comments section, of someone going, bang, 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 referee, he's done, referee. It's the referee's job to decide. Herb Dean, credit to him, does a great job here of going, no, DC, keep fighting. Watch this. Watch DC plead to Herb. He's like, no, the fight's done. He's like, keep fighting. He's fine. Like Miocic was covering. That's a good recognition there. The fight was absolutely not over. DC pleading to the referee. I don't like to see that stuff. It's focus on the fight. Focus on getting your finish. Good little scramble back to the feet there. There's evidence there in that first round that Miocic can get back to his feet. He can scramble. He can work out of bad positions. He just can't wait in them because he'll just burn the clock. And that's DC's A game. That's he can do that all day. Okay. Got some replays. Second round. Same again, second round. Miocic does the right thing. He's moving, he's jabbing, he's on his toes. He actually lands a couple of knees in this round, if I remember right. A body kick first and then a knee. Like, this is a good range for Miocic. He just needs to keep this range and pick and be patient. Instead of he constantly tries to land that right hand. Because the right hand that he throws is short, it puts him in too close a range. Like, that was an extension of his right hand. That wasn't really a punch. He's just testing here because he knows that that was nice. That was nice. He knows DC's trying to grab everything he does. I've been enjoying watching this fight back because the work that DC does. The work that DC does catching and trapping hands is really, very cool. I think it's something that will be developed over time. Like I said, the risk is finger pokes. I mean, we can see this position here. We can see how there is a clear danger there. It's something that the referees and the fighters need to be aware of, because I wouldn't want it to negate this actual wrist play, because I think it's a fascinating part of MMA. I just think we need to be cautious of that. I'll just play this through full speed so you can see it. Sorry, I'll play it through slower so you can see it. Watch this shot to the body that he lands here. Bang. That's a really nice shot to the body. I think the reason that he didn't keep going back to that is because DC's got a great poker face. I just don't think he showed that it hurt him. I don't think he could help it with the left hook to the body, but I certainly think that was one of the more significant shots that Miocic landed. Okay, you see, the thing is now DC's starting to walk his way into range. I think he realises that it's far less risky to actually be walking into his punches and trying to slip away from them than to be on the end of his kicks and punches like that. One thing I think Miocic needs to do in this next fight as well is use more of those uppercut attacks. It was another one of the most significant punches that he used in this fight. See, it's like he knows what he's doing. It's like he knows he needs to be moving, but then he just gets stuck still. He gets stuck playing this reaching and hand playing game with DC, and he's just not fast enough to do it. Like, DC can do this the whole time, and even a lot of the shots that I'm counting as significant strikes, they're actually glancing off DC's head. Like, that's not as significant as it looks initially when you watch it. Like, DC's moving away from that. He's already riding that punch as it comes over. It's coming over the shoulder and he's moving away. Look, he just ducks into it. He's absolutely fine. James Toney, if you watch James Toney's boxing matches, there's so much of that kind of stuff rolling off his shoulders and rolling off the sides of his head and taking punches as they come across his chin. Like, people that have been, sparring with people they trust, like DC would have been with Kane for years, you kind of get this play, this kind of play where you ride the punches, you see where they're coming, and at this point, he knows where the extent of Miocic's reach is, so he can work to the end of that reach. It's a difficult thing to try and explain, but it's something that becomes instinctive when you've been training for a while. You kind of get used to rolling shots. Robbie Lawler's excellent at it, and I think Robbie Lawler, he takes a lot less shots than people actually count on the total strikes. All this work here with DC's got his hands down. He's confident, and Cruz says it in the commentary as well. Look at that beautiful work. Cruz says it in the commentary as well. He's using his head as bait. He's reaching out, but he's using his head as bait. So that was another little eye poke there. But it looks to me like, because the thing is, a lot of the time with DC's punches, they're kind of swiping. They move across the face and they swipe. And I think a lot of time, you've got to think the edges of the gloves. I should have grabbed a pair of gloves. I think there's some in the gym. Just throw me one. Like, if you think, like, when your hand's in a glove, there's still edges around the edges of the fingers and of the thumb, and there's the inside seam, and then you don't know whether wraps are looser and things like that. There's all different kinds of stuff that can scrape across the face, even with a closed knuckle, even with a closed hand. It's part of the style, part of DC's style, and it's part of the reason why it's difficult. It's because you don't see these. Yeah, they'll be fine. Just chuck them over. Shout out to Rocky Warriors Cartel and my friend Pavel. So this is a different style of gloves, but like, even with that look, you've got these bits on a closed fist that as the hand's coming across, you're still going to be catching edges and seams, and like, MMA's 30 years old. We've got a lot of improving to do still. And I think, some of these styles of fights, I think, are what educate us about what we need to do. Anyway, I've gone off on a tangent here. DC uses this style that is problematic for eye pokes because of him reaching out constantly. He gets a lot of warnings for hands going out and that kind of thing. He does a lot of this like smokescreen kind of play. I've been trying to think of an analogy for his style of guard, and the only thing I can liken it to is an umbrella. And it's like if you think I've got an umbrella here, I've got a shield that I can point towards any oncoming traffic that is coming over the top or straight at me. The vulnerability is the shots that come underneath, the rising attacks, the splash. You know what I mean? It's the uppercuts, the knees, the kicks. It's all of those shots that are vulnerable, that you're vulnerable to when you've got this kind of style. And this is why I'm wondering whether DC is going to fight the same this next time around, because that body shot may have educated him that there's a big vulnerability there when he is reaching. This is another point where I think Miocic was underutilizing. He's got DC in a very vulnerable position here, where I think he just maybe didn't realize that DC had a vulnerability to the body that he could exploit, because there's a lot of opportunity here for him to strike to the body and to knee to the body. There's a point where he's actually got him double underhooks, completely tied up, but he breaks the clinch again. I think he's massively underutilizing those ranges. Anyway, let's skip through some of this. So, second round, I think this is a great round for DC. I just think he's able to pepper Miocic and not really take anything significant in the process. I think his hand fighting's great. I think his single necktie work, constantly working into that single necktie, was making Stipe really cautious. Look at that. I mean, that's lovely work. I will say that Stipe does a good job of reversing this. I think it's this position. Yeah, like he's good at getting off the fence. He just can't wait. And those angles that he's cutting as well. Like, this is where camera 7's the best camera for me. I like to watch from the top because I like to see him cut these angles. But let's just watch this again. Watch the way that Miocic moves himself off the fence here. Circles off once, DC cuts across, circles himself off the other way. Like, he's got really good footwork getting himself off the fence, but he gets caught flat on his feet sometimes and reaching, and that's where he's vulnerable. Like, if he goes back to his boxer mentality where he's moving his feet as well as his head and cutting angles, especially because you've got to bear in mind this is a smaller octagon at the apex. There's a lot less space for him to work with. Like, I think DC just feels like he's cruising quite comfortably here. None of these shots are really phasing him too much. There's one punch that lands and it bloodies his mouth, and I've not exactly been able to figure out which one it is. But he just looks so confident and comfortable in this range that he's able to get his head out of the way of anything coming towards him. Like, watch the way he rides those two punches. That's a perfect example. Watch these two punches come out from Miocic. First one is just out of range. Look at that. That's the full extent of Miocic's punch there, and that is just out of range. And DC's in a good position to start grabbing. As the right hand comes over, DC knows it's coming. He's already moving away from it. Glances right over the back of his head, and then DC's in with an underhook. Like, that starts to feel risky if you're a fighter that keeps throwing and finding yourself tied up, and then DC punches on the break. I mean, it's just a great round for DC. I just think he really feels like he gets a measure of Miocic, and Miocic has got nothing coming back that's really bothering DC, it seems. I mean, he's face down. So there was something that happened on the stool between rounds as well, which I think is interesting. Let's just skip through. Okay, let's just play this. So as DC gets back to his corner, I mean, he's very relaxed. This is a very lazy kind of relaxed, hands down. He's just cruising in this round. He won the first round comfortably. Maybe he feels in the back of his head like he's got the first round in the bank. He's also got that opportunity for a takedown in the bank. Maybe he realizes that he can't do those big takedowns every round. Maybe he has to go every other round. See, that to me, look at that. Let's just quick assess this, because it's important we focus on these things sometimes. That to me looks like a closed fist. But what we can't see is what his thumb knuckles doing, because the white tape here is DC's thumb. So the likelihood is that the punch went out, but because he's punching up and he's punching through the guard, I mean, there's hand play going on the other side. He's not winding up for a proper punch. As he's going up, his thumb may have gotten caught on the eye socket, something like that. There's a lot of things that could have happened there. But that's definitely something that both of these guys are going to have in mind. and do exactly what you're supposed to do. Keep on him. Fight's a fight. Good work on the inside uppercut there from Miocic. Used that a few times. He uses it in the next round as well to create space off the fence. But just the hand play of DC is. I'm going to study it a bit more, and I'm looking forward to this fight to see if he's adapted it, because I think there's definitely something to it. So here in the corner now, I'm not going to play it through on the audio here because I don't want to blast your ears. Like, get some noise cancellers on and listen to it yourself. There was some confusion because it sounded like he said, "Am I losing?" Like it was a question to Crazy Bob Cook, and that was the way it was interpreted by the commentary team. I think like Joe Rogan mentioned it. He was like, he's just asked if he's losing the fight. I think he knew full well that he was losing, and I think Bob Cook was coming in going, "You've got to beat him to the punch, and you've got to keep your hands up, and this and that." And there was a bit of a panic from Bob Cook in the way that he was communicating. So DC kind of sat down and was like, "Am I losing? Like I think we're all right." I think that was the vibe that I got from it. I don't think he was under any illusion that he was losing the fight. I think he felt like he was cruising 2 rounds there, and Stipe was starting to fade. I think his confidence was peaking at this point, to be honest. And I think I think it is important, and the only reason I'm giving you my interpretation of it is because I think it changes the mentality going into the next round. Like DC now is going into the next round, but he feels like, yeah, he might be slowing down, he might be fatiguing a little bit, but he also feels like Miocic is fading faster. He also feels like he's landing the better shots. Look at Miocic's face in the corner. I mean, he's swollen up, he's bruised up. DC's not really getting hit with anything. He's cruising at this point. And I'm sure with DC knowing what he's capable of, he probably feels like he can continue cruising, into the championship rounds. Okay. Right. So again, Miocic is moving. He's on his toes. About 30 seconds in, for whatever reason, he decides he wants to take down. I don't know why. I don't know why he did that. It makes no sense to me. But when they're back on the feet, it was like there was a little bit of extra energy wasted there, which he didn't need to. And now he's stationary again. His feet are flat. He's not moving. So now he's in a position where DC can start working his way into range around Miocic's punches and start landing his own shots, work his way into the clinch. It's good work by DC. It's exactly what he needs to be doing. He's got an 8-inch reach disadvantage, and he's not getting hit with the majority of the shots that are coming towards him. It's great work. That was the shot from the previous fight. Just stung him with it. Let's just watch that back. Because it's still there. He throws it a few times. You can go through the last fight and watch it yourself. Here he's in the same situation here, look. Same single necktie. Little foot sweep from Miocic, which I quite like, which squared DC up. I'd like him to have chained a knee on the end of it as well, because I think knees to the body in these positions, a real vulnerability. He took that shot much better, but it's still the same punch. There's still a gap there for that punch to get through. Okay, where are we? Now, I mean, like, Miocic looks slow. He looks fatigued. He doesn't look like he's coming back in this fight. He looks like he's just going to slowly wear down until DC can take him down and rear naked choke him. That's kind of the vibe here. I mean, Miocic, it's just not like there's just that the energy of Miocic's game is gone. He even gets warned for hanging on the fence here. But you can see that DC's also resting. But he's not resting because he can't work. He's resting because he doesn't feel like he really needs to. Like he's comfortable. Right, let's skip through some of this. There's a little bit of cuddling and a little bit of resting. Underutilized again by Miocic. Not enough knees to the body. Okay, back out in the open. Right, DC's pressuring now. He's rested half a round now. Nothing really significant happened. He didn't particularly lose the round. He could quite comfortably win the round with the next 2 minutes of work. Quite comfortably. So he starts to pick his work rate up a little bit. Like he's a well-conditioned, mentally as well as physically, professional athlete. Like even if he gets in there with a week's worth of training camp, he knows what he's got in the bank and he knows how to manage that energy to make sure he gets the most out of what he can do. And I think that at this point, that's what he was doing. I don't think he came in as prepared for Miocic because I think he was expecting to finish him in 2. And I think maybe that's where the underestimation of Miocic's toughness and durability comes in on the second fight. The first fight, I really think Miocic underestimated DC's power. Second time around, I think DC underestimated Miocic's durability. I think that this is a much more honest fight between the two of them. This is one other thing I'm going to talk about before I get onto the finish. Miocic gets a takedown here, which again is a signifier that DC's tired. The first thing that DC does as well, he's landed naturally on his back. Look at the effort he goes to get to his belly. That's an instinctive thing for a wrestler to do. That's his get-up position. I think if the fight's going Miocic's way and DC starts to fatigue, I think there's an opportunity for Miocic to start putting the wrestling on DC. Like we've seen DC will accept takedowns when he's tired. When he's tired. We've also seen that Miocic can control and beat people up from this position, even if he needs to keep taking them down. DC doesn't have the highest amount of takedowns in heavyweight history. Miocic does, but that's because he had to take Mark Hunt down over and over and over again. If he gets into the championship rounds and DC's slowing down, there's no reason why he can't start making him work with the wrestling game as well. Make him carry that heavyweight frame that he's got. Beat him up, work him over like DC did to Anthony Johnson. I don't think Miocic is going to go for the rear naked choke. He's just not got the history of it. But it's certainly a position where he could make his weight and his size felt by DC. Anyway, let's just watch this through. Nice work on the break again. But I just don't know why Miocic separated there, aside from the fact that he's maybe tired. Then there was a bit of an ego shot there from DC because he'd been taken down. Both of these boys are starting to fatigue now. I just feel like DC again, like pressure straight away. Minute left. And he does good work in this last minute as well. And Miocic just doesn't really look like he's got much coming back at all. DC's basically kind of coasting to a comfortable decision or maybe a finish in the next round here. Great. Well, anyway, let's get through some of this. A couple more low kicks, a couple more punches. Good work from DC. Won him the round comfortably without expending too much energy. I mean, look at that. There's 9 strikes in it on that scorecard right now. How many of those 9 shots were landed in this last 2 minutes? He's managing his energy well. He's very smart, very clever the way he does it. All right, 4th round coming up. Both of these boys exhausted. Look who's getting work in the corner though. Like DC's got a few marks and bruises on his face, but nothing significant. The thing he needs more than anything is oxygen. Miocic on the other hand has got ice going on. They're trying to take some of this swelling down, this skin on that face that's ready to break open as well if he takes any more big punches. All right, let's get through this a bit quicker. Okay, same thing again. Miocic is on his toes. He's moving. DC's got his hands down, but he's giving the octagon. He'll burn these first couple of minutes if needs be. He's not 100% switched on in these first couple of minutes, I think. Looks like he wasn't in the last round. And now Miocic is starting to pressure, but it's steady pressure. He's not getting hit with a great deal in return. He's also starting to bait DC's hands high. I don't know whether someone whispered something to him in the corner or whether this was just an opportunistic punch that he threw. But it seemed to me like he was trying to get the hands high of DC. He was engaging in this, even though there was not a great deal of reason to. All right, this body shot's coming soon. Good pressure from Miocic. If he manages this range with this jab and stays patient, he'll be able to build the rest of his game off it. I just feel like he walks into DC's range too much. Right, where are we? Here we go. Bang. Okay. Immediately you can see DC's arms go down. It's a horrible feeling. Miocic sees it and he goes for it straight away again. So now he goes to the head, tries to mix it up a bit. DC's smart. He reads it. But now you can start seeing that there's an enthusiasm on Miocic's face. There's a change in his movement. There's a little bit more speed in everything that he's doing now because he's like, I found a chink in his armor. I found a crack in his guard that I can start to exploit. And he starts to build his whole game around it. I mean, there was a danger of him leaving himself exposed here, but I think he felt like he was doing enough damage to not have to worry about power shots coming back. Dig into that body. Like, he can see how hurt DC is at this point. But like DC again, you can see him reaching out. Like, imagine if he'd have started doing that work in the first round with knees and with kicks and that kind of stuff. Like they might not have been in the 4th round. He might not have taken all these punches because DC might not have been so comfortable walking himself into range and grabbing at him. Like, I mean, look how quickly this fight changed. That's the difference. That's like landing a calf kick in the first round, like Cejudo against DJ. It can change the round entirely from just doing one thing, learning one thing about your opponent. And it's not the body shot that does it, it's the right hand across the chin that does it. But that's what opens that right hand up. If he'd have not set it up with the body shot, the vulnerability wouldn't have been there. Like, DC's not only tired now, but now he's hurt to the body. And trust me, if you've taken a body shot, even in a sparring session, you can't go into the next round feeling 100%. You never get back to 100% after a body shot in a fight, in my experience. It's always a vulnerability. It's always a, oh God, he's coming for my body again. You know what I mean? And Stipe knows it as well, which is why he's investing so hard in it. And DC's doing a good job of covering and like trying to keep pressure on him. He's doing the right things, but it gets to you eventually. Lovely footwork. Watch this. Bang. Oh, watch how DC's posture changes. So sets it up with nice punches to the head to bring his hands up. Right hand across the chin, lovely work. But watch this dig. He's fully loaded on this lead leg here. I mean, if you're throwing a full power body shot to a bag, this is kind of what you look like. Hang on a minute. No, hang on. Sorry, I skipped too far. Where are we? There we go, that's the one we want. So, hands are high, look. He's baiting the hands high here. Watch how he digs. Look, you can see how he drops his body into it. Watch the level of his head change against the octagon fence. Bang! Right into the floating rib. That just knocks the air out of you completely. You can immediately see DC's whole body's changed. Oh, that hurts. That hurts bad. Hands are down now. And then the 1-2. And this is what hurts him. Bang. Lined him up. Right hand right across the jaw. And then the circle off, the lovely pivot out the way as DC reaches for him. I mean, you show a vulnerability against Miocic like that. And he'll get the finish. Really nice. Really nice. So what we got now? We've got DC with that first round knockout. So Miocic knows that DC's powerful in the first round. He wants to hustle into the clinch. And he also learned from the second fight that DC's got good takedowns and he's able to control him. But DC will slow down if he pushes him. If he stands still, he's going to get his legs kicked to bits. DC knows that he can knock Miocic out if he gets into close range, but also that Miocic is durable and adaptable enough to find ways to make him vulnerable if he's not on his A game. Both of these guys are coming in with full respect for each other at this point. There's no messing about here. There's no underestimating on either side. They're both going to come in fully conditioned for 25 minutes. DC says this is his last fight. I don't think it makes a change when you're actually in the fight, but I think it makes a difference in the training camp. Like every time he gets on the airdyne, every time he ties his running shoes on, every time he laces up his sparring gloves, he's like, I can see the finish line, I can see the end. You'll give an extra little bit if you know it's your last training camp. I think DC's going to come in supreme shape. I think he's going to step on scales probably about 235, and I think he's going to look good. He's going to look lean. He's going to look conditioned, and I expect the same from Miocic. I think what we'll get in this one is an honest contest between two guys that know each other very well and have everything on the line. The heavyweight title is that's the prize of the sport, and DC wants to go out on top. Miocic wants to remain on top as the heavyweight champ, and get looking forward to some of these big paydays that are coming his way with some of these other exciting contenders. I know this has been a long one. I hope you've enjoyed it. Obviously, there's been a lot to talk about with it being the TRILOGY rematch, but I'm very excited for this one. It's going to be a fascinating fight. Enjoy UFC 252. See you next time.